Either love it or you don't. It's totally okay with you as a group person.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are live. If you're watching us on Chabad.org, say hi. Say hi. If you're watching on Chabad.org, say hi anyway. I had some issues with whatever. Now it's on, so. What? There's no printout. You can take a piece of paper. Okay, let's start, my friends. I need someone to say hi, so I know that we have some viewers. If you're watching, what? Hello, Barbara. Hello, Sadell. Kim's on. I don't see any viewers, so if you are watching, say hi. I don't see any. Oh, Ravit is watching us. Okay, so Ravit is watching. Okay, that's good. Hello, Ravit. How are you? Okay. I don't see anyone on Chabad.org, but it's okay. If you're watching, say hi. We actually can see the messages. So tonight, my friends, good evening. Hello, Tov. Getting ready. Hello, Randy. Getting into the Chanukah spirit. So tonight will be the first part of two parts, going through the Chanukah story, me in the Chanukah story. And tonight, I want to tell you the story really of American Jewry, of most of the Jewish people in America today. I want to tell you the story, but I'm going to tell it to you in the prism of the of two people, of Jason and Menelaus. Okay, Menelaus. I think that's how you pronounce his name. I don't even know what his Hebrew name is. I didn't see it.
These are real people.
Real people. They were high priests in the temple.
And his name was Jason?
Jason, the high priest. And Michelle is getting a look like, huh? Jason, the high priest? You don't expect to walk into the temple and see Jason there behind the, not behind the desk, behind the altar. Behind the altar, hi, I'm Jason, the high priest. Right? And so I want to make a warning that what I'm going to say is not about Jason or about Menelaus or about Jack or Joe or Jim or Joe or anyone else. It's about an ideology that existed in the Chanukah story that exists again today. And there's of all the biblical stories, this biblical story may be one of the ones that we can most powerfully relate to, although it might be too close to home perhaps, but it's okay. We're not afraid to, we'll be gentle, but we'll say the story as the story goes. Story of Jason and Menelaus. I really, really, really should have looked how his Hebrew name is, because if you look online, we don't have a record of his Jewish name. Sure must exist somewhere, but I'm saying it's not written in the regular records. Jason's Hebrew name is Yoshua, that I know. But Jason is also easy to say. It's Menelaus. Menelaus is how you spell it. But I'm going to get to the story. It's a long story. It's an interesting story. It's a story you honestly don't know. You never even heard his name. So that's why you come to class Monday night, to hear stories that they didn't teach you in Hebrew school. And the story I'm going to tell you tonight, it's a Chanukah story, but it's not the Chanukah story they told you in Hebrew school. That I can promise you. They don't say it in many schools. Now we got comments. So hello, Steve. Or Steve-O, rather. Hello, Lori. I'm glad you're with us. Oh, Regula's on. Stephanie's on. Looking forward from Blooming, Illinois. I'm glad you're watching. I look forward to every Monday, too, by the way. And hello, Gail. And hello, Sean. And hello, Kim. See, Kim's watching. Okay. Maybe they got bored because we started late because of the computer. Tonight's class is in the memory of Yitzchak ben Yosef, his soul shall have an elevation. Okay, you ready? So, in order to appreciate the story of Jason and I believe it's his brother Menelaus, we need to start about like 200 years before. It's a long story. Once upon a time, many years ago, there was a great man. At least the world says he was great. He was called great. His name was Alexander the Great. Now, the story of Alexander the Great, you know, right? You do know. It's a fascinating story. It's an important story. In not too long, but not too short, because it's quite an interesting story. Alexander the Great was a very, very young general who took over from his father. There are some theories that he actually killed his father so he could become the emperor, the leader. and he became one of the greatest military warriors and generals of all of history. He literally conquered the entire world. He was the world's richest man before Elon Musk and before Jeff Bezos. Yet Alexander the Great, somehow, history looks at him differently, but Alexander was truly great. He conquered the whole world. He went all the way to India, and he couldn't go any further, basically. His kingdom was tremendous. Now, there's an extremely important story to know about Alexander the Great and his relationship with the Jews. Now, Alexander the Great is coming towards the land of Israel. He's coming, and of course, the Jews are petrified that he's going to destroy the land. This is going back to the year 356 BCE. And he comes towards the land of Israel. He's marching towards the Persian Empire. And as he's coming, he comes towards the Jewish land. And there, Shimon HaTzadik. Shimon was the high priest, the last remnants of the members of the Great Assembly, comes out to greet Alexander the Great, dressed in the clothing of the Kohen Gadol, dressed in the clothing of the high priest, which was perhaps not allowed. Obviously, it was the right thing to do. The clothing of the high priest was only worn in the temple. He went out all the way to the gates of the city to greet the army of Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great saw Shimon HaTzadik standing in his clothing of the Kohen Gadol. Alexander the Great got off of his horse and bowed down before Shimon HaTzadik. You can imagine that the other officers and generals and leaders that were with Alexander were shocked to see their king, their warrior, their general bowing down before a Jew. He said to them, "You should know that every night before a major battle, I have a dream, and this man appears to me in my dream praying for my success." And because of that, Alexander the Great never lost the battle, by the way. He never lost. Because of that, Alexander the Great said that the Jewish country would not be touched. Jewish land was completely unscathed. It became part of the Greek Empire. Obviously became part of the Greek Empire, but there was zero damage. There was no destruction. Unlike everywhere else Alexander the Great went. But what did he do? He conquered. He came, right? He conquered, and he made it a Greek place. And he imposed the Greek culture and the Greek idols and the Greek ideology. He imposed it upon the nations that he conquered. And this was always what he had done. He was a great proponent of the Greek culture and spread it literally wherever he went. He spread this culture, which most people were okay with. Jews are obviously very proud of having our own culture and our own style and our own Torah and our own history. And many other nations that have invaded and conquered us on the way to other lands, they destroyed our culture. They tried to anyway. Alexander the Great gave permission to the Jews to remain exactly as they were, complete religious freedom and almost autonomy to the Jewish people living in, basically autonomy to the Jews living in Israel. He then goes on, he destroys the Persian Empire. So we have just to give it the context of history. The Persian Empire is the story of Purim, right? After Purim, we come back, Darius the Mede, actually the son of Esther, gives permission to build the second temple. So it's the times of the second temple, and the Jews are living in freedom. In fact, as a tribute to Alexander the Great for not destroying the city of Jerusalem and not destroying our temple, the way he did to most other big cities that he conquered, was that year, any Jewish boy that was born was named Alexander in honor of Alexander the Great. That's how Alexander became a Jewish name. Today, Alexander is a Jewish name. That started in the times of the Second Temple when the Jews made Alexander a Jewish name in tribute to Alexander the Great sparing Jerusalem from being destroyed when he went through towards going down to the Persian Empire. Okay. Truly a fascinating thing. Now, Alexander built many big cities for himself and all that. He was going down from Lebanon to Egypt. That's where he was going when he came from the city of Tyre, going down to Egypt when he, so to say, spared the Jews. Now, Alexander died in the year 323 BCE at the young age of, anyone knows? 32 years old. Wow. Interesting. He was very, very young. 32 years old when he was killed. And his empire did not survive his death. This is basic history that you guys learned in school, if you remember all those years ago. And his empire was divided into three main empires, or three main groups. You had they were centered in Greece, in Egypt, and in Syria. Okay, so you have, of course, where is Israel? right between Egypt and Syria. You got Israel always manages to be smack in the middle of the action. So you have the kingdom of Alexander, you have Greece, you have Syria north of Israel, and you have the Egyptians below. Now, they were called the Ptolemies. In Egypt was the Ptolemies, and in Syria was the Seleucids. Okay, the Ptolemean kingdom was under the rule of a king called King Ptolemy, who actually was very close to the Jews. So much so that he decided, and you might be familiar with the story, he was so curious to understand Greek culture that he decided, the Jewish culture and the Jewish wisdom of the Torah, that he actually decided to take 70 rabbis and force them to translate the Torah into Greek. This is called the Septuagint or something. I don't know how you read it. I don't know how to pronounce it. Septuagint, from the word 70. How do you translate it? This is also a fascinating story. It's a side note to the main story, but it's a very interesting story. So he was worried if we'd call in a few rabbis and ask them to translate the Torah, they wouldn't give him an accurate translation. You have to understand that back then, the only way to know Torah, the only way to know the Torah was for a rabbi that spoke Hebrew and knew the commentaries, knew how to read it because these commentaries would teach it to you. The Torah was a closed book to the rest of the world. They heard about the Torah, but there were no non-Jews that wanted to learn the Torah. King Ptolemy wants to learn the Torah. So he goes to the effort of bringing 70 rabbis from Israel. Doesn't tell them what he wants. Tells them he's having a meeting, I don't know. He brings them there. Believe he paid them, wasn't under force. He put them into 70 different rooms, so you can have whatever you want, food, water, candies, whatever you want. You can have it. But you can't leave this room until you finish translating the entire Torah into Greek. And the rabbis, this is a famous story, that as they were translating, they realized that they have a problem because many Hebrew words or the phrases won't translate well. And they could create misunderstandings of the text. For example, the very opening words of Bereshis. In the Hebrew, it says Bereshis, bara Elokim, which if you were to translate it literally, would say Bereshis, in the beginning, bara created Elokim, God. Sound like Bereshis created God. Now, we don't translate it that way. We say, in the beginning, God created, but you have to switch around the English and the Hebrew to make it fit properly. And there are many such examples. God said, let us make man. If you translate it, let us make man, the Greeks could think that there's multiple gods involved in the creation of man. So every single one of these rabbis, sitting in 70 different rooms, all decided with what's called Ruach HaKodesh, a divine spirit of prophecy, or called divine intuition, if you will, that guided each of these rabbis to collectively make the same changes. And every one of these 70 rabbis decided to translate the words, let us make man, not in the literal way, let us in the plural, but rather God said, let me make man in the singular to avoid the misunderstanding that may come as a result of that translation. This is both a miracle, it's also considered a tragedy for the Jewish people. And one of the reasons why we fast is because this began a interconnection, or almost like an intermarriage of ideologies with Greek culture, where they now had access to Jewish ideas and Jewish wisdom, and started mingling and integrating Jewish ideas into their own culture and their own world views.
That's okay, isn't it? Because we want to be involved from that.
Marsha is asking an excellent question, which is, being a influence on the world is a Jewish job. That's true. It is. Let's see how the story continues.
Yeah, they probably took it the other.
Well, let's see what happened. No, we have to be an influence. You're right. We are meant to be an influence onto the nations. The danger is going to be when we allow them to become an influence on us instead, which is kind of what is going to happen. Let's answer the question. I don't want to leave it hanging. It's an important question. Okay, so here we have the Ptolemy. He translated the Torah, and the Greeks are learning the Torah. They're enjoying the Torah. They love the Torah. And I have all my papers here. And eventually what happens is Antiochus V takes the throne. He's the king of the Seleucid Empire in the north, okay? He goes to war against the Ptolemy Empire down in the south. And it doesn't go too well. And basically, Antiochus takes over. After him, you have No, it's Antiochus. Sorry, Antiochus V. So he takes over now. He's ruling this entire land, and the one that ruled from Syria to Egypt was Antiochus III. I missed. Antiochus III was the one who, in the year 30, well, the English year 186 BCE, waged war with King Ptolemy of Egypt, conquers that land, and the Jewish people go from being under Ptolemy to being under Antiochus III, which is part of the Seleucid, the Greek Seleucid Empire, and that's how we end up under the control of Antiochus V, who was a crazy madman. Antiochus called himself Antiochus Epimanes, which meant Antiochus, the chosen one by God. But behind his back, people called him Antiochus Epiphanes, which means Antiochus, the crazy one in Greek. That's how he was known. And so oppression already from Antiochus III begins to get worse and worse for the Jewish people. You know why? Because when you're fighting wars, you know what you need? Money. You need money. And as a Jew, they're going through Israel to go fight. Antiochus III is going through Israel to fight with King Ptolemy, who's in Egypt. Below Israel, we get stuck in the middle. The wars are taking place, and they're raiding from the people of Israel to get money, to pay for the soldiers that are there, to get food, to get lodgings, etc., everything they need. But that wasn't the greatest danger to the Jews. The greatest danger to the Jewish people at this time was not the fight between the Seleucids and the Ptolemies. It was a fight that started taking place between the Jews against the Jews. Always. There were many Jews that began to integrate Greek culture into their own lifestyles. At the beginning, there were not so many. But they began to spread more and more. By the time Antiochus came around, already a majority of Jews had become Hellenized. Now, Hellenized, or in Hebrew called Yevanim, that's the Hebrew word, Yevanim, English Hellenized. Yevanim, from the word Yavan. Yavan is Greek. So Yevanim is Greek. The Jews have become Hellenized, or Hellen is also, if I'm not mistaken, Greek, right? The word Hellen, if I'm not mistaken, maybe I'm wrong. So what does the word Hellen mean? It is Greek. If I'm not mistaken, I think the word Hellen is also a Greek word, like from the word, means Greek. So Hellenized means it became Greek-ish, right? Very Jewish to become Greek-ish. And that's exactly what happened to the Jewish people. And the Jewish people, all of a sudden, for the first time in their lives, are facing a new kind of enemy they have never, ever faced before. Ever, in all of Jewish history. Up until this point in Jewish history, every single enemy we faced looked different than the Jews, acted different than the Jews, had different values than the Jews. They were Egyptians. They were an immoral, disgusting society, and the Jews were moral, spiritual people. Amalek was a disgusting, corrupt society, descendants of Esau. The people of, the idol worshippers in the land of Israel, the Canaanites, they were idol worshippers. These are people that had no common ground. They were pagans. They were not people. The Jewish, there was no values of beauty, of love, of kindness. Like the values that officially that are Jewish values were not found in pagan cultures at all. There was no similarity. The Greeks, although they were also idol worshippers, they were not the same kind of idol worshiper. Then idol worship was much more of a theoretical ideology. It was much more a culture and about the beauty, about science, about culture. To them, they had idols. They had their Zeus and their temples, but they weren't devoted to their idol worship the way that previous pagan cultures were. They were very, very sophisticated, educated, cultured people by the standards of those times. Greeks were very into beauty. They were very into the arts, into culture, into languages. They studied other cultures. They loved to learn. You have Aristotle and Socrates and Plato. These are all Greek philosophers. If I'm not mistaken, Aristotle was the private tutor of Alexander the Great. So this is the whole culture, is a culture of philosophy, a culture of understanding the world, of understanding other religions. And so this is the first time that the Jews ever have an experience where the people that are fighting through their land are not against the Jews. And they're not even that different than the Jews in many ways. In some ways they were. They were very into the beauty of the body, and Jews were much more modest about their bodies. But generally speaking, the Greeks were cultured. The Greeks were philosophical. The Greeks believed in abstract gods that you couldn't see. So when we talk about the pagan idol worship of earlier generations, they were literally bowing down to statues of stone. You understand? So a Jew, someone bowing down to the statue of rain, it's crazy. Greeks weren't bowing down to they didn't believe that this piece of wood is going to give you health. Their gods are much more abstract and ethereal and fables and in some ways, on a superficial external level, similar to Jewish stories and I don't want to say the words, but you could look at it as if the Jews also have our own fables and our own stories and some Jews felt very much a natural relationship and a natural kinship with the Greeks because in so many ways we were similar to them. We both had values. We both wanted to discuss philosophy. We both wanted to discuss beautiful art. We both made temples to gods you couldn't see. Understand? So there's a lot of similarity, a lot of connection between the educated, cultured Greeks and one of the few nations that lived in the Greek Empire that were, in some ways, even the more educated, cultured Jews. And the Greeks wanted to befriend the Jews, and the Jews were, wow, we finally have a mighty nation that appreciates our wisdom, that wants to study our Torah, that wants to be part of our system. And what happened as a result? The Jews became extremely assimilated. But when I say the word assimilated, I want to clarify what the word assimilated means. Assimilated does not mean that they lost their Jewish identity. They created a new Jewish identity based on how they thought Judaism and Greek culture are synonymous and can live and coexist in peace and harmony.
Like today.
Don't tell me the punchline. I'm still setting the stage. Hellenists, no, she's right. Hellenists, she said, Hellenists were not embarrassed of being Jews. Hellenists weren't trying to run away from Judaism. They weren't trying to convert out of Judaism and say, I'm no longer a Jew, now I'm a Greek. Hellenists wanted to bring Greek culture into an upgraded, enhanced, more modern form of Judaism. The first people to, so to say, modernize Judaism, if those words sound like anything that any Jew would say today, to take the beauty and the values and the ethics of Judaism, the abstract, ethereal beauty of an invisible God and of love and of culture and of philosophy and of celebration and family, things that they did, which wasn't in other cultures, then Judaism is beautiful. And I want to upgrade and modernize Judaism so it can be more palatable to the world in which we live. Make it a little bit more palatable, a little bit more, that people can understand it. We'll get rid of some of the more archaic, outdated parts of Judaism, like the circumcision, because that was crazy, because the Greeks, they used to walk around naked all day. Now you went to the gymnasiums, and the gymnasiums was all about the body, the strength of the body, the athletic power of the body, the beauty of the body. And so they were walking around, and to them, to destroy the body, that's crazy. Circumcision is, if the body is the most beautiful thing created by God, and they accepted these values. You can't destroy and mutilate the body. So Jews began to accept this, and actually Jews would go under very painful surgeries to undo their circumcisions. Yeah, they invented it. Just like today, there's surgeries to change your body. Back then, there's also surgeries to change your body. They didn't invent it today. And there were surgeries to literally remove the circumcision, or rather not to remove the circumcision, to bring back skin somehow, to put back your foreskin so you should look perfect, just the way God made you, without any blemish of old-fashioned, outdated, archaic Jews from a different time and a different era when it made sense to cut off parts of the human body.
Right there, they had all the 70 people right in the Torah that you should circumcise.
Of course. Now they're translating an outdated book.
Right, that's exactly.
They're translating an outdated book.
We need to update it.
We need to update it, make it more modern so that today's kids can relate to it. And these Jews sincerely believed in their Judaism. They were not, you have to understand this, they were not Jews trying to run away from Judaism. They were Jews that somehow convinced themselves that the future of Judaism in a Greek world, the Greeks are running the world. The whole world is one of the Greek empires. And the only future, the only way Judaism can survive as a nation, as a people, as a culture, is if we modernize. Nothing wrong with modernizing. Yeah, so, look, the whole world is modernizing. The whole world used to be idol worshippers and pagans and nomads. And, today we live in a much more modern world where everyone understands a lot of these basic ideas. And in many, many ways, Greek culture was very compatible with Jewish culture. Many of the values were the same. The study was the same. The understanding of astrology and all the things that Judaism believed in. That, again, astrology, these things, Jews knew about astrology. What did the rest of the world know about astrology? Nothing. There's secret gods that there are balls of every ball of fire you saw in the sky was another god, fighting with someone else. They didn't understand that there's stars and orbits, and the Greeks understood. The Greeks were learning what Jews already have in the Talmud, what Jews already have, and they were blown away. And so these Jews said, we need to get rid of just the parts of Judaism that are archaic. And then we'll truly be able to bring Judaism into the 21st century, or rather the, whatever century it was. That is exactly and literally what they said. Pretty crazy story, right? Can you imagine some Jews in America today, and again, I'm not criticizing any Jews, there's ideologies that have convinced themselves that as an ideology, to help God, so to say, keep his religion going into the future, we need to modernize his religion a little bit.
I think these people have been reincarnated back to our time.
Yeah, it's the same. The struggle is the same. So I'm saying this is me in the story of Chanukah. This is the most relevant story. If you look in the text, this is the only thing I was going to print, but I didn't. 1 second. If you look in the text of what we read every day on Chanukah in the prayer book, so there's words, we're describing exactly what the Greeks wanted to do to the Jewish people. You know what it says they wanted to do? If you read the Vi'al HaNisim prayer, we say it in the Amidah. What do they want to do? Times of Matisyahu, the high priest.
All the Amidas, we read it?
Yeah, 3 times a day, starting Wednesday night, we're going to be reading these words. And if I go really, really close, you can see it. But basically it says, the wicked Hellenic government rose up against your people to make them forget your Torah and to make them forget, to violate the decrees of your will. These words are important words. The previous Rabbi talked about them a lot. The basic idea. The Greeks did not want to make the Jews stop learning Torah. They had no desire to make the Jews stop learning Torah. In fact, they loved the Torah. They had translated the Torah into Greek and they were studying the Torah. And they used to have study partners where they would learn together, where there were these, multicultural, or that's what I'm looking for though. When you have different religions together, whatever, they would sit together and they would discuss the Bible. You know what they wanted to do? Lashkicham Torasecha. They wanted to make the Jewish people forget that it was your Torah, that was God's Torah. You can study the wisdom of the Torah, absolutely. The same way you can study the wisdom of anything. You can study math. Aristotle taught lots of beautiful ideas in astrology, in geometry, right? Taught all these new cultures and philosophies. As you can philosophize and pontificate and study as much Torah as you want. As long as you forget that it's Torah Secha, that it's your Torah. They wanted to make us violate the chukim, the chok, the different kinds of statutes and of laws in the Torah. Some laws are considered mishpatim. They're considered very logical laws. The Torah says don't kill and don't steal. They're logical laws that any normal culture does. And so guess what? We do it. The Greeks did it. The Greeks also had laws against killing and murder. You close that. They also had laws against stealing from another person. They were in many ways a organized, sophisticated culture with a judicial system and a legal system. So they also have laws. Besides from Mishpatim, we have Eidos. We have laws that are statutes, that are testimonies. Keep Passover. Remember the Exodus from Egypt. The Greeks said, sure, go ahead. You want to have a holiday to remember Passover? Remember the day the Jews left Egypt? It's a very important historical event of the Jewish calendar. We're all in favor. You want to eat matzah to remember what the Jews ate when you left? Eat matzah. There's nothing wrong. The Greeks had no problem with eating matzah. You know what they had a problem with? The chukim of Ritzonecha. A chok is a supernatural laws. The laws that make no sense. Laws like keeping kosher. Laws like having a circumcision. This is a chok. It's a law that's a statute of God. The God says, this is what I decree, you got to follow. So those are Ritzonecha. Those are your desire, oh God. They're not logical laws. They're the desire of God. And that's what the Greeks said. You can, and the Greeks, the Hellenists, the Jewish Greeks, or the Greek Jews, right? The Greek Jews said, listen, God, we are happy to study Torah. It's just, we don't want to study the godliness in the Torah. It's not your Torah. Just like Jews today will tell you, the Torah is a beautiful book, it's an important book, but it's not God's book. It's a culturally important book. Maybe God wrote it, but it's okay. We're going to update it and modernize it. Or maybe we'll try and convince ourselves that God didn't write it, really Moses wrote it, and he had other helpers write parts of it later, and we're going to find a way to justify how we, as human beings, can change what an infinite God wrote in his Torah. So the words of the prayer book, where we say that they wanted to make us forget that it was your Torah, are exactly what the Hellenists were trying to do. You can be a good Jew, and you can go to synagogue on Shabbos, or on Yom Kippur, you can do your dues, you can pay your membership, and you can hear a beautiful sermon as long as you don't think about God. It's cultural, philosophical. You can do the mitzvot that make sense. You can make sure to not marry your sister, and you can make sure to not kill and steal, and you can also eat matzah on Passover, but the laws that make no sense, that you can't do. The ones that are God's will. And in fact, when the Greeks came into the land of Israel, and they started putting down very severe laws because the Jews were fighting against them, what were the laws that they said were forbidden? There were three main laws the Talmud tells us that were forbidden by the Greeks. Circumcision, Shabbos, and Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh is a Jewish calendar. Because these are things that take us away from the Greek culture, that remind us that who's in charge of nature, in charge of the world? God. What's the bris? My body belongs to God. It's a covenant between me and God. What's Shabbos? It's a reminder that God made the world. Same thing with the calendar, with Rosh Chodesh, that God is in charge. Following the moon, I don't get to that right now. And so these are the things that these Greeks had a tremendous problem with that became these sticking points. So the Greeks are not really fighting against the Jews. The Seleucid Empire, Antiochus, is really fighting against the Ptolemies in Egypt. This is important. The Seleucid, Antiochus, is the king of the Seleucid Empire in Syria, in the north. He's going down to Egypt to fight against King Ptolemy, the Ptolemean Empire, which is the other part of the Greek from Alexander the Great that had fallen apart, was his own kingdom. So that's who Antiochus is fighting with. He's fighting the Egyptians. But in the meantime, within Israel itself, there's a much greater war going on. It's a war between the Jews, the modern Jews, the sophisticated Jews, the Jews that have integrated into the culture of the times, who are proud to carry themselves as intellectuals and culturally successful Jews, who are proud of their Judaism, who celebrate a Pesach Seder, who have a big mezuzah on their door. But they call themselves Jason. They don't have Jewish names. They have Greek names. And they don't keep Shabbos. And Jason, that's how Jason identified. He self-identified as Jason, not as Yeshua. And there's this huge battle going on, a spiritual battle, but became a physical battle, between the old-fashioned Jews, who would later become called the Maccabees, but they weren't called that just yet. They were the old-fashioned people, still holding on to an archaic version of Judaism that was true to God. And the New Age, the modern Jews, the Hellenized Jews, who felt the need to update and modernize Judaism to fit into the new world in which they lived.
So was
The war was not Jews against Jews. I'll tell you what happened. Marsha wants to know. I was about to say.
Oh, I was really good at that.
Are you really going to get upset, huh? So as I said, Antiochus is fighting down below Egypt, below Israel in Egypt against the Egyptians. The war is not going too well. It's not going too well. And eventually he's commanded he has to stop the war. From Rome, he got a command to stop the war. And as he's coming back, in the meantime, in Jerusalem, I missed something very important. I missed it. So at that time, Antiochus went down to Egypt, that this man Jason, now we come to the story of Jason, said, it's time for me to update Jerusalem. Now, Jason was actually from a family of priests. His brother was Shimon, the Kohen Gadol, a descendant of the Shimon HaTzadik that had saved Alexander the Great's life, and then when Alexander the Great met Shimon HaTzadik, he bowed down before him. This Shimon had probably a grandson whose name was Shimon, the high priest. His brother Jason says this is not good, and so Jason comes to Antiochus, and he was trying to convince Antiochus to build a massive Greek gymnasium right next to the temple in Jerusalem. Now, to build a massive gymnasium, it will bring visitors and tourism and culture, and it'll become one of the destinations of the Greek Empire to build the next big gymnasium in Jerusalem. Yeah, the Jews asked for it. Antiochus at first didn't agree. It was too much money. Where's the money to pay for it? To build it was a lot of money. You want to turn this city into a Greek city? I need money for it. Now, where was their money? The temple had money. The temple every single year would collect the half shekel coin from all the Jews for the annual, every day with the offerings brought in the temple on behalf of all the Jews. So the Jewish people every day would give a half shekel. Every year would give a half shekel coin, collection of a tax. And then there were other funds for orphans, for the poor, for the bedek habayis, for the upkeep of the house. So people were constantly donating stuff to the temple besides for the half coin. All the mice went to the priest, but besides that, to the temple there were, if I'm not mistaken, 13 different charity boxes in the temple. People come in and bring money and stuff, birds, animals, for the different funds. So Jason tells Antiochus, let me become the high priest, and I will give you the money from the temple that you need to build a Greek gymnasium here in Jerusalem. So Antiochus does that. He sends a group of men, and he has them come, and they get rid of Shimon HaTzadik, Shimon the Kohen Gadol, and this Yehoshua, who went by the name Jason, becomes a new high priest. I believe, no, not yet. He was forced to leave, but eventually he's killed. You're going to hear what happens later. So Jason is the one that asks the Greeks, come, we're going to make this into a Greek city. And he changes the name of Jerusalem to Antiochia in honor of Antiochus. Changes the name of the city. And they start construction on this massive gymnasium. They want to turn Jerusalem into one of the new hotspots of tourism for Greeks to come to learn from the Greek Jewish culture and have next, not to destroy the temple, to be a temple, to be a gymnasium. And it'll be this beautiful harmony and coexistence of cultures and religions and all that good stuff. Now, Antiochus is down south. He's in Egypt. He's told that he has to stop the war because the war is not going well. And when the war stops, a rumor spreads that something had happened to Antiochus, he had been killed in battle. This is pre-WhatsApp and social media, although not social media. I mean, false stories and false rumors can spread today too, but they did it back then also. Some guy started a rumor, nothing to do with the Jewish people per se. Somehow a rumor started that why did the war stop? Antiochus was killed in battle, so that's why they're stopping the war. Word went around that Antiochus was dead. And thinking that he was dead, people came and they rebelled against Jason. I made another mistake. Let me just confirm. No. So actually, it wasn't against Jason. It was against Menelaus. So after Jason was a ruler for 3 years. I have like different notes here, and I have like two different.
Stories.
I just want to make sure before I go further. Yeah, so I skipped because I was going to my punchline, and I skipped a part. So Jason now comes to Jerusalem. He starts building this. He takes all the money of the temple, sends it to Antiochus. Antiochus starts to build this. They have a mission. They start building this beautiful, Greek thing. Obviously, people don't like it too much. Now, in the meantime, when you start with money, you start buying the rights as a high priest. What happens? Someone else thinks I can buy it for more money. So Jason had a competition, and he sent the brother of Shimon the Benjaminite, whose name was Menelaus, to go deliver money to Antiochus from the temple treasury. He sends this guy Menelaus as his personal agent to go and deliver the money. What does he do? He comes to Antiochus and says, Antiochus, Jason sent you this, but I'm telling you, I can get you more. I can get you more than what Jason is sending you. Get rid of him, put me into power, and I'll be even better for you, and I'll get you more money out of the Jews than Jason is getting for you. Continuing the same ideology. I want to build the temple, the gymnasium, and all that, but I'll do it better than you. So what happens? Antiochus goes down to Egypt, and he comes, he gets rid of Jason, and he goes and he puts this new guy, Menelaus, into power instead. He was really money hungry. And he had made some really big commitments to the Greek Empire that he had to pay for. So how's he going to pay for it? There actually was not more money in the temple treasury. So you know what he starts to do? Taxes. He starts selling the possessions of the temple, the vessels of the temple. It's all worth it. We got to build a gymnasium. What's more important? An outdated menorah? I don't know, or the gymnasium, the future. We got to prioritize. What's more important? Hebrew school or YMCA? You know, what's more important for the future of the Jewish people? If you don't have a JCC, I don't want to knock anyone in particular. If you don't have a playground with the beautiful, the best sports fields and the best, why else would Jews come to a Jewish center? If not for the basketball field and the swimming pool. So we need to build a swimming pool. That's exactly what Menelaus said. If you think I'm talking about something that's happening today, I'm telling you history. I'm not talking about today. I'm just telling you what the high priest was saying. The future of Judaism is to build a gymnasium. So if I have to sell off temple property and temple belongings and temple stuff to do it, okay, Zol Zayin, for a good cause. Saving Judaism. Saving it by destroying it.
Can you imagine having to tell?
They believed it.
I was going to say
They believed it. So Jason believed it. Menelaus, I'm not so sure about. Menelaus, I think he was more money hungry. What?
No, you tell yourself enough. They believe it.
Correct.
So things that
Yes, because
we are going to read in just a few weeks.
So listen. So after the 3 years, guys, let's focus. I want to finish. Still some stuff to say. So after 3 years of Jason being the high priest and raiding all the money in the temple, he's disposed. He has to run away for his life. Antiochus brings in this much more ruthless, money-hungry guy who comes in and he starts really getting money out of the Jewish people, and he's selling off stuff because he has big promises to the Greek Empire that he has to pay. And I think now I'm going on my own personal. That if you ask me, the way I understand, Jason truly believed in his cause of Hellenizing Judaism to save it, and Menelaus was purely money hungry, who was just, it happens. You start off with idealistic causes, and then many people go into whatever politics or charity work, or they believe in the beginning, and then they get a little distracted, blindsided on the way, and next thing you know, Menelaus sees an opportunity for more money, more power, and all he cared about was the money. To him, the Judaism part or the Hellenist part was just his position to justify his importance. And so, as I said, he starts robbing the temple, literally, and selling off stuff. And this already was crossing a line. This is crossing, and now the Hellenist Jewish community is fighting with each other. You understand? You can't imagine this happening between different factions of non-religious Jews, where one group of Hellenist Jews that was more idealistic, maybe, or more old-fashioned, they still revered the holiness of the temple. I believe in the gymnasium, but I still understand that, Shabbos is holy, the temple is holy. You can't sell property of the temple. And then you have the more modern guys say, this is old-fashioned stuff. What are you holding on to it for? You're just a hoarder. Let's sell this stuff and let's build something new and more beautiful. You understand? And here you have a fight now between the followers of Jason and the followers of Menelaus. Okay, he's stealing all the stuff. And now is when you have the story, they started saying, I missed this whole part. Antiochus is forced to stop the war in Egypt. And he stops the war in Egypt, and these rumors start spreading around on social media and on Facebook. They didn't have Facebook, but and that Antiochus was dead, and that the revolt had, that the war in Egypt had failed. Guess what happened? The Jews in Israel rebel against this ruthless, money-hungry Menelaus, and they come to kick him out of power. Well, they tried, but it didn't end too well. So Antiochus is where he's in Egypt. His money guy is Menelaus. Menelaus is being chased out of the temple, and they're trying to get rid of him. So what does he do? And he's feeling a little bit ruffled under the feathers because he was forced by Rome to stop the war in Egypt because it wasn't going too well. So he's feeling a little bit, his ego is a little bit hurt too now. And now he's being told that the Jews are rebelling against him. He's taking it. You have to understand, Antiochus took it, that the Jews were rebelling against him. Really, who were they rebelling against? Menelaus, the guy selling the property of the temple. This guy's taxing the Jews left, right, and center. He's busy stealing all the money he can to send it to Greece. So, you already went too far in bending over to the non-Jews and giving up all the sense of independence. So they kick him out, and Jason is trying to get back in, and Shimon is trying to get back in, and you have this whole war going on now within Israel. So Antiochus is told, Menelaus, what did Menelaus do? He runs to Antiochus and says, save me, save me. He doesn't say they're rebelling against me. He tells Antiochus they're rebelling against you. So Antiochus comes with an army to crush the revolution. And that is all the build-up to what they told you in Hebrew school, the Greeks came to destroy the Jews. When they started telling you when you were a little kid in Hebrew school, when you were an adult, they said that the Greeks came to conquer the Jews, and they came to destroy our temple, you didn't hear anything of what I just said for the last hour. The Greeks are only in Israel. They're only fighting over who's the high priest because the Jews came to the Greeks and said, make me the high priest and I'll give you more money. And then the next guy came and said, make me the high priest, I'll give you even more money. Why? Because they were convinced that by Hellenizing the temple, by modernizing Jewish culture, by modernizing the Jewish temple service, and making it more trendy and more with the times.
Yeah, music.
More music and guitars. I saw a clip. I won't say which synagogue I saw. I saw on Facebook. It came up my Facebook feed 2 weeks ago. A very large law in America. Needless to say, not a Chabad show. And so they did some kind of, there's a musical called The Wicked something?
Yeah.
Yes.
I haven't seen the musical, but it's obviously, so they did, the Adon Olam, they did, the rabbi and the cantor, the female cantor, did a parody on Wicked.
Sounds like that.
So she's saying, maybe it wasn't Bethel, but whatever. They did a whole parody, they saying, I don't know, I'm so, I don't know exactly the words, and then I don't know, whatever they're singing, the two of them, the rabbi with their nice little tallis, here, with their microphones, and they're jiggling along to the Wicked song, and that's the Shabbat service. You understand? I mean, it modernizes the service. It makes it much more understandable for the youth of today. And I'm sure that they think, oh, look at us. We did a great job. We made Judaism more relevant to our youth. We made Judaism more relevant to the future. I'm being kind by assuming that they have very noble intent. I'm not being sarcastic. I really do believe that they have good intentions. I'm not being facetious. They believe, the same way Jason believed, that by having the Greeks build a gymnasium next to the temple in Jerusalem and making Jerusalem a capital to the world, make it a center of tourism, would enhance Judaism. It would enhance our future. It would establish us as an important people in humanity. And therefore, we ended up with the story of Chanukah. Okay, so let's continue right now. So, before I get to the end of it, before I tell you the lesson for us, I want to tell you what was the end of the story of Menelaus. You know what happened to Menelaus? Shimon was killed. He had to run away. Jason, I don't know what happened to him. Menelaus eventually ran away. Whatever. The Jews fought back against the Greeks, right? You know that story. Next, we're going to talk about the Maccabees and Matasio and the fight against the Greeks. But this guy, Menelaus, eventually ran away. And a friend of Antiochus, his name was Lysias, who was a childhood friend of Antiochus, told Antiochus the truth, that the one that had started this whole revolt was Menelaus, who had been like ruthless, and that's why the Jews were rebelling. You know, the whole fight that started, now you're ready to war with them, started because of Menelaus. So you know what he did? Menelaus was taken on order of Antiochus, a city called Beroa, and he was executed by being thrown into a tower filled with ashes, where he sunk to the bottom and suffocated to death. They had very brilliant ways of killing people back then. They were very, not just going to waste the bullet on you, we're going to drop you into a tower full of ash so you'll fall to the bottom and suffocate slowly in this tower of ash. And the Jews said there's a very fitting punishment, this poetic justice, so to say, that because he desecrated the temple of Jerusalem and he desecrated the holy altar and the flames of the altar and of the menorah, that's why he died, by being suffocated in the ash. So, my friends, we're here. Let's talk about us in case you couldn't have any idea what we were talking about for the last hour, like how this could be relevant to us today. Just in case you don't understand, I'm afraid to spell it out because I don't want to be too harsh. You know what I'm saying? But here's what I want to say to you. I'll say something a little more in their defense. Where did they mess up? The Greeks were into culture and into beauty, and the Jews are into beauty. And in fact, God blessed Yefes with beauty. Yefes is the father of the Greeks, the three sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Yefes. So the Jews come from Shem, the Greeks come from Yefes. Yefes is a word like Yafeh, Yofi, right? Beautiful. So Jews are not against beauty. Not against beauty. You know what the problem was between the challenge or the problem with the beauty of the Greeks was? The Greeks were into external beauty. They never saw inside the beauty. And if we want to go spiritual, what makes something beautiful? Think about it for a minute. What makes something beautiful? A beautiful art, beautiful music, beautiful painting, anything. What makes something beautiful? There has to be a harmony. Everything has to come down to one. If you hear in the symphony orchestra playing music, it's beautiful. It's 15 different kinds of instruments being played by 70 different kinds of people. Whatever the exact numbers are. Seemingly, we have musicians here, right? A guy playing a trumpet and a guy playing a drum is not beautiful. It's two completely different instruments. But when they're playing the same song and they're all playing in the same melody, in the different instruments, you know what you're really hearing? The one song. And when you look at a beautiful painting, even though it's all different colors, what you're really seeing is one painting. You see it all comes together, how it all integrates and has a synergy. If you look at a painting and all you see is a bunch of different stuff on there and you can't see how it all comes together, it ain't beautiful anymore. The beauty, what? A cake, food, anything, any beauty, clothing. You can wear a white shirt, a pink pant, I don't know, a pink shirt and the gray pants or a chleis. I'm not so sophisticated. I have a white shirt, dark blue pants, I got it. But you could wear all kinds of cool stuff, right? As long as they blend, as long as there's a color wheel and they have to match each other, or there has to be a certain contrast, or the opposites on the color wheel. And so it boils down to, it all comes together. The core, spiritually, the core of beauty is the oneness that exists within. And when you see something beautiful, what you're really seeing is the harmony within the many colors, with the harmony within the many sounds of the instruments, the harmony within the many flavors on the plate. So you watch cooking shows, not that, I was watching, there's like a certain, all different stuff, there's like a harmony, it all comes together. There's a oneness in the different pieces and the different ingredients. That's harmony. It's the oneness of Hashem inside it. The Greeks got lost on external beauty, and they never looked into the inside. Jew has to be able to see the depth, the inside, the pneumis, as we call it. the truth. The danger of becoming a Hellenist begins when all you see is superficial. When all you see is the way something looks on the outside, without ever taking a moment to stop and see what's on the inside. When you look at Judaism superficially, yeah, circumcision is quite outdated and barbaric. And so let's modernize Judaism. We'll still be proud Jews without the no driving on Shabbos, because that was back in the day when people didn't drive, so it made sense. But today, to say you can't drive, so either we're going to be like Jason, we're going to try and find ways to explain that Judaism really allows in a certain situation, or we'll be like Menelaus, we'll be like, it's about the money. The Jews, the Maccabees, which we're going to get to next week, God willing, were able to see the inside, see the truth. And they didn't allow the external cultures of the non-Jews around them to define who they are. Which is why the translation of the Torah into Greek became dangerous for the Jewish people, because it allowed other nations to have values that came from us and to look and sound and feel similar to us, and to begin to believe that we share the same value system and the same ethics and the same codes, and then begin to believe that we can be like them. And that's the danger. That's the danger. That was the danger of the Hellenists back then. That was the danger of Jason and Menelaus, who felt that the future of Judaism is by having a Greek gymnasium or a swimming pool and a basketball court as the centers of the Jewish community. And from there comes the story of Chanukah, where all of a sudden the Greeks are controlling the temple and we've lost our identity. Understand? That my story, my friends, is the story of Chanukah today. Exactly as it happened back then. Same thing. Okay, you got it. Chag Sameach, happy Chanukah. Wednesday night. Wednesday night is the first night of Chanukah. Please join us 5:30 for a beautiful menorah lighting outside. The Rolling Kosher food truck will be here in the parking lot. So we'll have music, we'll have food, there'll be a bunch of crafts for the kids. So you're welcome to come. It'll be a beautiful evening, 5:30 on Wednesday. Sunday is the big party in Sportsplex Park. It's only 2 to 5 p.m. There'll be a live concert. There'll be a menorah lighting, gelt drop. Jared, the Moskowitz will be there. And you got your email now. And next Monday night will be class, God willing. We'll do menorah lighting at 7:30 outside. We'll light the menorah together. We'll have some fresh latkes. There's some latkes and some music. And then at 8 o'clock, we'll have our regular class. Those that are watching us online, we'll go live 7:30 or 8 o'clock. I don't know, maybe 8 o'clock. Let's see. 8 o'clock. We'll have 8 o'clock. Got to be 8 o'clock. Before, we'll let the menorah outside. The menorah will have latkes, whatever, and 8 o'clock will be class. God willing. Deal? Deal. Laila Tov, my friends. God bless you all. Thank you, Orlin. Glad you enjoy it. Thank you, Maria. The woman use the mikvah? I'm not sure I understand the question. What time on Wednesday? No, that question either. What time? Carmen, what time was what on Wednesday? 5:30 is the menorah lighting. Thank you, Steph. I hope you enjoy. Thank you, Joseph. Laila Tov, everybody. Okay, good night, my friends. Yes. You heard from him or not?